You come from this family that's had generations of this. There's a cycle for generations. But then you're the person that comes along and says, "Oh, well, I want to become a millionaire." You might have, and I'm an optimist, so I want to say that this comes from a place of love. You might have family members that say, "Listen, this isn't in the cards for you. Don't do this. Don't try to start this business. You're going to risk all your money. You're going to lose everything. Don't do this."
Welcome to the Phase 4 podcast, inspired by Vishen Lakiani and Ajit Nawalkar, co-founders of EverCoach, a division of Vine Valley. In this podcast, we speak to coaches and creatives about where they were, where they are, and where they are going. This is an intersection of what we focus on expands, and your story is your superpower. My guest today is Cody Jones. He is a mindset coach and a podcast host. And his podcast sounds a little similar to this podcast. So if you enjoy it, go check it out. And we'll talk all about that and more. And Cody, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm grateful too. I love what you're doing, like I said. And I think the best place to start, I usually is ask people, how do you end up in this space?
Man, that's a very short question with a very long answer. So I just turned 32 last weekend, actually. When I was 20, I started my first business at 20. I started a landscaping company, which I still have. I was right before I turned 21. And so it just turned 11 years old. And, being in that entrepreneurial space, learning a lot of that stuff, doing a lot of that stuff myself, I learned a lot about business, about other people, about myself, about entrepreneurship. And so I just kind of took that, decade or so of lessons and eventually got into fitness about 5 years ago. Started martial arts journey, which I trained a little bit, started a podcast journey, the mindset coaching stuff. So it's been a very busy decade for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, first of all, happy birthday. But I think martial arts, for me, I like to meditate a lot. And martial arts seems a lot like a meditation, that just teaching yourself. It's not about beating people up, which I think
Right.
is a common myth. But you want to talk about that?
Yeah, man, that's such a good point because, I think a lot of parents have a fear of if they put their children in martial arts, they're going to become bullies. But the exact opposite is true. They're usually more statistically, it's more statistic that they're not going to be a bully and fight off the bullies because they have the confidence to do so. That is one thing that bullies thrive on, is the lack of self-confidence. That's one thing that perpetuates the cycle of bullying. And so I would say, I don't have children, but if the parents are listening, put your children in martial arts. It will definitely teach them, of course, how to take care of themselves, how to be more confident. But one thing that I really appreciate about martial arts, and you mentioned meditation, and I think that's a really good sort of way to connect the two. Martial arts, especially for men, I think as men, we need to know how to fight, protect ourselves, protect others. But one of the best things about martial arts is it teaches you how to take a loss. If you're sparring with someone else and, you're going light or whatever it is, maybe this person is better trained than you. Maybe they're more, they have more skills than you, but it teaches you that it is okay to fail. It's okay to try something new and not be good at it. And, we can talk about how important humility is and how dangerous pride is and all that kind of stuff. But to sum it down, man, it really, I think one thing that we as men is really dangerous for us is excessive pride. And that's in our personal lives, in our business settings, financially, spiritually. Excessive pride is dangerous. But when you put yourself in a martial arts gym and you allow yourself to, quote unquote, battle with this other person who's more experienced than you, it shows you that you might fail. It might, be uncomfortable temporarily, but it's going to be okay. And you're going to learn from that and you're going to become better from it. And then, of course, the self-confidence about being able to protect yourself. But that's only one side of the self-confidence that you learn, because you actually learn that, it's just like in the gym, the physical fitness part of it. It's probably not comfortable for anybody to go into a martial arts gym for the first time. These people they're way more experienced than you or whatever, but you're putting yourself in that environment that it's not comfortable. And so you're essentially proving yourself to yourself in that environment. And so that'll help you with your self-confidence. But yeah, martial arts, man, we could talk all day about that.
Yeah, I like the end there about that you're pushing yourself to something new. just to stretch yourself. Like the tagline here is what we focus on expands, and you have to push yourself further than you think you can go.
For sure.
It, it doesn't matter what it is, business, physical health, body, mind. But once you do, you realize, oh man, I could go that far. I didn't think I could. What else could I do?
Exactly. Yep.
And so tell us maybe a little bit about your coaching business, mindset business. What does that look like and what kind of people do you work with?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So, again, the mindset coaching that I do is directly relevant to my journey. And so, if anybody knows anything about landscaping, it's a very competitive industry. It's very, very competitive. It's usually easy, somewhat easy to get into it. It doesn't take a lot of money or a lot of skill to get into landscaping. We eventually we started residential, and we still do some residential today, but we eventually went commercial and industrial. So we started the bigger projects and that kind of stuff. And so my mindset coaching business really, there's sort of four key areas that I focus on with people. It's the mindset, which are things like the identity, the self-confidence, self-esteem, core values and beliefs, those kind of things. The other aspect of it is performance, that's mental and physical, how you perform, how your longevity, your stamina, things like that. Another aspect of it is tools. This would be things like leadership, those kind of things, and then strategy, which would be like your team building, your sales, your analytics. And so there's four key areas that I work with people on. I would say, as far as who, I always answer this with an acronym, which is BASE. So business owners, athletes, salespeople, entrepreneurs. Those would be the people that I focus on. And here recently, this is actually a pretty common thing for me. It would be new entrepreneurs. So I've actually had this several times in the last couple months. There's a person that comes up, maybe they have a job, they want to start a similar job or something in a different industry. They just don't know how to start a business, in that industry. And so the coaching there would be sort of help guiding them in that very, very, very early entrepreneurship journey. So that would be, I guess maybe that would be the who of who I work with.
I love it. Base, business, athletes, sales, and entrepreneurs. That's a good one. I have one called bias, and it's more a framework of just how to get what you want. And it stands for belief, intention, action, surrender. And
I
if you
love.
have all four of those, then you got it, right? And then the mental mess that happens to us when we don't get our way or the control doesn't work, it's because we're not surrendering. So it's
Mhm.
the first three is kind of easier. The fourth one's a difficult.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And then maybe if we could switch over to your podcast. So it's called the Pure Wisdom Podcast. And man, what a great name. I feel like I've seen it like a couple years ago, but I don't know. It's good name. So can you tell us about the podcast, what kind of people you talk to? And I'm sure the conversations are exactly like this.
Yeah, so you might have seen it a couple years ago, man. I don't know. I've been working on that thing. It was one of those things that was a very slow start. Like I actually started that thing probably 2022 sometime. But it was like, I don't know, I put out a couple episodes here and there, then deleted them because it started out with just me. I was just me talking about things. And I was like, man, I don't really like the way that sounds or whatever. So eventually I went to interviewing people, and I actually just recorded I just released, it's actually releasing tomorrow. My 100th episode is coming out tomorrow. And so it's the ideal guest that I have on there would be someone who has some sort of wisdom to offer from some area of life. I mean, I've talked to, fitness coaches, trainers, I've talked to entrepreneurs, business people, spiritual coaches, just people in, spiritual in general, energetic coaches, which are always interesting, dating coaches. I mean, we had a lot of conversations on there. So it's really just trying to extract, wisdom from different people's careers or experiences in life. And that's where the name Pure Wisdom comes from.
Yeah, that's great, man. There's this thing in like psychology called top down processing where the way we learn and the way we grow is by connecting with other people, having those conversations. The opposite is bottom up, where if you're afraid of public speaking, go start speaking. If you're afraid of the water, jump in the water. And so I love the top down approach. And I know from my own experience, I learned so much every time, like I'm researching for a guest or just having these conversations. There might be something you said, like bass, where I'm like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. And I think it's such a good idea, but I wonder where where do you see the podcast going in the future?
You know, surprisingly, man, that's probably one of the few things I haven't developed a long-term plan for. Because I don't know, I just enjoy doing it, you know?
Yeah.
I tell people that I wish, and I didn't start it to make money, but I wish I could do something with it to help perpetuate itself, because it's eventually it's gonna get to the point where if I have to hire a producer or something like that, you know, I guess we'll kinda cross that bridge if and when it gets there, but for right now, it's just something I enjoy doing, you know, I just enjoy having these conversations with people, always learning you know, something from them. So I hope that whatever happens, that I can, you know, continue to do that. I hope that that's the case. That's sort of my plan with it at this point.
That's great. And did you say it started out as a blog?
Yeah, so it's crazy. I started out just kind of writing Facebook posts, you know, and eventually that I was like, okay, this is not resonating with me. This isn't what I want to do. So then that's when I started to kind of talk, you know, just by myself. I realized, I don't know if you do solos or not, but I realized you have to know a lot about a lot to talk about, you know, a podcast by yourself.
That's
I mean, it's
great.
just yeah, so it's just, you know, it never worked out for me. And then I started interviewing people. I was like, okay, this is it for me right here. This is what I want to do with this podcast. And generally I have fun on there. I think the guests usually express to me they have fun. It's usually open conversations. Sometimes, you know, we'll go down some deep rabbit holes about the aliens and conspiracies and stuff, you know, and it's just we have fun conversations there for sure.
Yeah, that is awesome. I could imagine doing a solo episode. You'd have to talk for a while. I have a buddy has one. He calls it the morning catalyst, and he capped it at 5 minutes. And I don't know if
Uh,
that's why, but that's I'm like, what a
sure.
great idea.
Yeah, for sure. Cause yeah, man, cause you can't, I mean, you would have to, I listen to guys like Andrew Huberman. He does a lot of solo stuff, but he's also educated. He's a very smart guy, you know? And, I would say probably 5 minutes max would be what I should do. I have done a solo episode. It was about 30 minutes. And I might do more solos in the future, but I would say, you know, probably no more than 30 minutes for sure.
Yeah, that's good. I do like Andrew Huberman too. So, what are maybe some other mentors or coaches or teachers that you learn from that help you?
You know, I think Andrew Huberman is one. Dr. Jordan Peterson is another one. I like his philosophy on a lot of things. I think the first, I guess, maybe sort of life coach in this space that I ever heard of was Tony Robbins. And I used to listen to his stuff all the time when I was in the early days of my landscaping company. You know, it was year 3 or 4, whatever it was, and you know there were the long days. I was by myself a lot. You know, working then. Um, Tony Robbins was a big inspiration for me. Just sort of his shift on identity and the way he sees things was really beneficial. Eric Thomas is a motivational speaker I really like listening to. Inky Johnson has an inspiring story. Of course, you can't really talk in this space without mentioning David Goggins. You know, he's there pushing everybody along. But yeah, man, it's those Joe Rogan's got some good stuff. He's got some good guests on there. So I always tell people that we social media and the internet definitely has its detriments, but one of the good things about it is that we can learn so much from other people, connect with other people, you know, if we use it for that way. But you can learn a lot from YouTube for sure.
100%. So all those mentors are amazing. I love ET the preacher too. Inky Johnson. I just had a guy on here a couple weeks ago was a NCAA champion, and then he ended up getting multiple sclerosis. But his story a little bit reminded me of Inky Johnson. Like he was gonna go pro, and then this bomb got dropped on him. But for anybody who knows me listening to this, and you know my style and you like it, and especially that motivational style and that part, listen to some of the mentors that Cody just described, because these are all the people that I listen to as well, and they're just so powerful. Tony Robbins is probably especially number one. I don't know if you ever been fortunate enough to go to a live event, but wow.
I haven't. Yeah, no, I haven't, but I've heard about them.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, man. It's like 12 hours nonstop, just woof.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so mindset coaching. So I guess what would be maybe one of the most common blocks that you see with people that you're talking to, either business, athletes, sales, or entrepreneurs?
You know, man, I think a lot of one of the biggest things I've found, and this is people from different areas of life, you know, different experiences. A lot of us are carrying around beliefs about ourselves that did not come from us. They came from, unfortunately, a parent, sometimes a sibling, unfortunately, a spouse, a, a educational institution, a religious institution. Some sort of belief was instilled in us by someone else, and we have taken that belief on as if we believe it about ourselves. So what this means is that unless you are conscious of this, a belief that you don't even have will direct your life. A belief that didn't even come from you will direct your life. And so what I really hope is that people will see that, this might not be something like, because it's crazy because they'll think that, like, okay, I can't do this thing, or I can't make this money, I can't build this business. And it's like, well, have you ever tried? I mean, you're 22 years old. Have you ever tried to do this? So, but it's instilled from someone or someone else. And I think just breaking that belief and understanding, first of all, that it's not even yours. Second of all, that it's not true, because there's no statistics to prove it. I think that's a huge shift for people.
Yeah, man, I see this for sure. Once I turned 40, I remember when I was growing up, it was like 40's the end. It's over when you're 40, right? And so I
Yeah.
decided I'm going to start running around 42, 43. I'm going to run a marathon. And everyone around me is like, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? They're like, cuz you're over 40. And I'm like,
Right.
what? But that's just the thing, right? It's been there and it's instilled. I have one where, like, just to illustrate this a good way is apps, right?
Mm,
We all have Uber on our phone.
mhm.
Along comes COVID, and I know Carolina was probably a lot better than we were. These guys were trying to lock us up forever here, but we don't need Uber anymore. So everyone deletes the app off your phone, right? So you're the phone, the apps are your beliefs. So everyone deletes Uber off the phone. We don't need it. What did we put in? We put in Uber Eats so we could order food to our house. Then COVID's over and we're allowed to go back out again. We need to get rid of Uber Eats, maybe put in a gym membership app on our phone and go to the gym. And so limiting beliefs are as simple as deleting and installing a new app. You just have to decide which it is you want.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I've actually never heard of that before, but that's a good way to put that. Deleting the app and downloading or replacing it with something else. Because it's like, if somebody were to give you a phone and it didn't, it wasn't reset or anything, it had all the apps on there. Well, it's like that's like you keeping those apps that somebody else gave to you. Like, would you not want to put your own apps in there that's like more, better, like, for you? I mean, it just that's a good analogy, actually.
Pure wisdom.
Yeah. But it's less like, I don't know. So you mentioned like 40, you mentioned turning 40. I kind of felt the same thing at 30, man. Like, everybody says, like, well, you're 30 and, you're not in your 20s anymore. But I'll be honest, man, I feel better at 32 than I did at 20?
Yeah, man. It's all beliefs, like you
Yeah.
say. For my 45th birthday, I decided to run 45 kilometers. And like,
Oh,
that's
wow.
an intention to say, like, anybody can do this. It's just a belief, but it's also telling your future self, like, this is a statement. This is where I'm at 45, right? So if the opposite, I think when I was 25, I was trying to drink 25 beers. They're like, "Wait." But it's
Yeah.
all like an intention.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's for sure. Like, it kills me, man, because people say that, like, you're supposed to feel this thing, or you're supposed to do this at this age, and it's like, where did that come? Who said that? Like, we hear other people say that, and we're just supposed to believe that that's the case. Like, where, and that's the whole thing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, big time. And even what you said is like where they come from. It's all the people who are supposed to look out for us and they're caring for us. And
Mm,
obviously they're just doing it with their own level of consciousness. But that's the crazy part is it happens when you're 0 to 7 from the people who love you and care for you the most. And then you
yep.
carry it through your whole life, right?
Yeah. Well, see, this is why things like intuition and self-confidence are so important. Because if you come from a family where generations there's been this belief, whatever it is, we can't make money, we're not going to be wealthy, whatever the belief is. You come from this family that's had generations of this. There's a cycle for generations. But then you're the person that comes along and says, "Oh, well, I want to become a millionaire." You might have, and I'm an optimist, so I want to say that this comes from a place of love. You might have family members that say, "Listen, this isn't in the cards for you. Don't do this. Don't try to start this business. You're going to risk all your money. You're going to lose everything. Don't do this." Okay, but that has been a generational cycle, and so then you come along. You have to have the self-confidence, self-esteem, I think would be a good word for it, to follow that gut feeling for yourself. Because I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. And if you're coming from a family who has generational cycles of this, it's definitely, you're not going to have a footprint to follow. But if you have this belief, or if you have this desire for yourself, you have to have that ability to follow that for yourself and to make that thing a reality. And this is why, we think about like self-confidence, we think about believing in yourself. It's easy to say those words, but if you do anything of value in your life, build a career, build a business, have a relationship, happy marriage, whatever it is, these things are not easy. And you're going to have to be able to listen to that voice in yourself. Well, how can you listen to that voice? Because that voice might say, "Hey, quit this safe job and go start this business that's very likely to fail. So somebody hearing this saying, wait a minute, you're telling me I'm supposed to listen to that? Well, if that's your intuition, man, that's your inner voice. You might want to be able to follow that, but we have to have the self-confidence and the self-belief, the belief in ourselves to be able to do that. Because we can listen to a lot of voices on the outside world, but that one on the inside, man, saying, "Hey, you should be doing this. You're supposed to be here." That's a very, very powerful voice.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, I have that voice too. I wonder if other people do. Like, I know other people do. I wonder if everybody has something like that, and then we just shut it back down. But you started that by saying gut. Listen to your gut. You didn't say listen to your mind. You listen to your gut. That's the intuition. That's how you know it's real life.
Well, your mind might keep you where you're at. Your mind might tell you, "Hey, this is dangerous. This is going to be hard, whatever." But your gut is like it's really more of your heart. It's like more connected to your heart, you know. And here's the thing, man. You follow that voice. Let's say you try to do whatever that thing is, and it fails. On the outside looking in, that might suck, but you listen to that voice, so you learn that you can. You learn that you can. Again, going back to martial arts, that you can fail, and it is okay. But here's the thing: what if you listen to that voice and you succeed? What if you listen to that inner voice and then you actually do the thing? And then you have proved yourself to yourself. And then whatever the next big thing is, you can look back and you say, "Oh man, well, I remember when I wanted to do this, I wanted to start this business and I listened to that inner voice and I actually did it. I actually pulled the thing off." That is what's going to help you push forward towards the next step, because then you have that little, it's like a confidence boost. You have that belief in yourself. Like, oh, well, I, same thing happened then, didn't believe in myself, but I listened to it. I proved myself to myself. And now I'm at this, I'm ready for this next step. I'm going to do the same thing and go to this next level.
100%. Socrates, Socrates way back in the day, he like had to stand trial. They were saying he didn't believe in gods and they wanted to put him on trial and he was talking too much. But on his trial, he got to argue his points and he said that he always has this voice that warns him. He was talking about intuition, if something's
Mm,
dangerous or if he shouldn't be going down a certain road, that he always has this voice. And he was standing trial for like if he gets convicted, he dies. Like he has to
mm.
drink some poison hemlock. But he's saying, I don't have that voice now. And he's like talking about intuition, saying, it never failed me and it's not failing me now. But it's the whole idea is like, if you listen to your gut and if you look back, those are the ways. My old man his dream was to, when he retired, own a pub, right? A restaurant. And he bought it. And it only lasted a couple years. But he went to his deathbed knowing I didn't like, because everyone else is probably like, you shouldn't do that. That's dumb, right? He lived his dream. And so now he can go to his deathbed and he doesn't have the regret of what if, could have, should have, what if, why didn't I do it? He did it. And who cares if it doesn't work? Because it worked.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. That voice, because it can do two things. It can inspire you and guide you, or like you said, what if you don't do that thing? Then you get to your deathbed, and then that inner voice is saying, "Well, what if? What if you tried that? What if you tried to open up that pub or whatever it was? You know."
Yeah, man. There's a book called The Five Regrets of Dying People, and that's like kind of
Mm.
one of them, but there's a pretty good information there. Um, I guess I ask everyone this. This is a phase 4 podcast, and phase 4 in the 6 phase meditation by Vishen Lakhiani. It's all about creating your future 3 years out. So where is Cody Jones 3 years from today?
Man, that's an interesting question because things have been changing so quickly for me, especially over the last year or two. So 3 years from now, that's interesting because I'll actually be 35 years old. So I think I think I would like to have 3 successful businesses at 35, and I think those businesses would be the landscaping company, the mindset coaching business, and the podcast. I would like to have those, and I can't tell you what successful, quote unquote, means because we think what success is, but then we could really get there, and unless we can give ourselves that credit to say, "Hey, I'm thankful for being here," we might miss the success when it comes. So I think 3 successful businesses. I don't have children right now. Maybe at 35, I'll start a family, somewhere around there. Seems to be a appropriate number. We'll see. The first thing I would have to do would be find a wife before then. So I'm so busy. I'm so busy with the businesses, man. I had to take some time back to, find a wife.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Um, I don't know. I think sort of taking the lessons that because I think back now to like 3 years ago and the things that I was learning. I was a couple years into my fitness journey. Probably that was right before I started the martial arts thing, right before I started the podcast. And so now we're here. So I would say what I know for sure, the concrete thing would be the three successful: the podcast, the landscaping, and the coaching business.
Yeah,
Three.
that's awesome. So now I'm wondering, about 3 years ago, did you think you would have been doing all the things you're doing now? Because 3 years, that timeline is something about it where it's like, man, I've done it over and over again. And every time I
Yeah.
get to the 3 years, I'm like, wow, that happened even better than I could have imagined.
And that's actually a really good point, because that's kind of a real world example of what I just mentioned about success might look different, from what you think. So to be honest with you, man, 3 years ago, I never saw the coaching thing in my future. I never saw being a coach or a mindset coach or anything. Like, I never saw that in my future. I thought maybe I would pursue some sort of motivational speaking career, motivational speaking business, something along those, which I guess maybe mindset coaching is doing that on an individual level, but I thought that would be more of a likelihood for me than individual coaching. But yeah, the coaching thing just sort of, so I actually just started the coaching thing about 7 months ago, somewhere around there. So it's still relatively new. But yeah, 3 years ago, and like I said, at the podcast even hadn't been started 3 years ago. So those two things kind of just, I guess, snuck up on me out of nowhere, seemed like.
Yeah, it's insane, right? I didn't have this podcast 3 years ago, and you're going to be like episode 215 or something like that.
Oh
It's
wow.
absolutely crazy. But it's such a fun game to play, man. I love just that thing. And one a mentor, well, I'm sure there's lots of mentors we didn't talk about in there, is Les Brown. You know Les
Uh-huh.
Brown? And he always says the how is none of your business. Like, your job is to dream. You make
Yep.
the dream and don't worry about how it will happen. And there's something there, like, scientifically and psychologically, if you give your target or brain a target to go for, and you talk about it, articulate it, send it out as a belief, your brain will figure out how to get there. And then spiritually as well, the same thing kind of happens.
Yeah, Tony Robbins mentions that if you want to take the islands, burn the boats. Don't give yourself that other option.
Wow.
Yeah.
This morning I read this. I'm reading Think and Grow Rich.
Yep.
I don't know if you ever read it, but it's
I
there.
Yep.
And I read that exact part this morning, which is like,
Yeah, mind blowing.
yeah, intuition, or that's alignment for sure. So I think
Sure.
as we begin to wind down, if this episode resonates with you, please like, subscribe, share, and reach out to Cody. Check him out for sure on the Pure Wisdom podcast, because he's got a lot of similar ideas as this, similar conversations. So if you like this, you'll like that. If you're looking for a mindset coach, you already know what you're getting. And I guess if you're looking for a landscaper in the South Carolina area, we got some of that too. But Cody, before I ask my final question, I always kind of let the guests take it wherever they want. So if you have a message of hope or inspiration, something to sell, or you want to marry it all together, take it away.
Yeah, I think we've kind of touched on it, man. I think there's this, especially in the motivational world, the self-help world, there's a lot of this sort of philosophy of doing more, working harder. We sometimes we don't feel like we're working hard enough. I think it's very easy for us to sometimes be our own worst enemy, which means, because of the law of polarity, opposites exist, we can also be our own best friend. So I kind of mentioned earlier about the self-belief, and I think that especially in the entrepreneurship space, especially when you're trying to make a career, you're trying to build something for yourself, you're trying to do something that generations before you, like we said, have not done. Almost nobody is going to understand what it is that you're trying to do. Nobody's going to understand it, and sometimes that includes a spouse. Nobody's going to understand it the way that you do. So what I would recommend to people who are in that space who want to do something, but maybe everybody around them is telling them it's not the right thing. Number one is believe in yourself. And you're only going to do that by proving yourself to yourself. Make those micro wins, those little small wins, because they will compound to get that big win that you're looking for. The second thing is put yourself in rooms with like-minded people. We have social media, we have the internet, we have networking groups. There's all sorts of ways to put yourself in rooms with people who are on the same path as you, and whose message, your message will resonate with them. You will find the encouragement, you will find leadership, and you will find wisdom in those rooms with of people that are on the same path as you.
Yeah, that's 100%. Hey, like, you have to be part of a mastermind, or you need to grow your network.
Mm.
I have a saying, it's habits tracked lead to habits stacked.
Mm,
And it's
yep.
like you're saying, you might not have the belief, and part of that is because all the people around you are telling you, "Oh, I can't do it, so you can't do it." And if you start buying into that, you're stuck. But if you take those little wins, and like in Atomic Habits, James Clear says, like, you don't need to meditate for half an hour. Do meditate for 1 minute and then two.
Mm,
I push-ups is the easiest one, man. Do one push-up today. Then tomorrow do two. And in a month, you're at 30. And like once you have that evidence, you can look at it and be like, yo, I tracked it. And it doesn't matter what anyone else says. Here's the actual proof of what's happening. And then
exactly.
that will help build your self-esteem and belief in everything. And then another part of it is like and this is why it's hard to answer that through your question, is because whatever you think you want today, you're becoming a different person. So a year from now,
Right.
you might not want those same things, or there's other things that you didn't see yet because you grew. And like,
Mm,
even as far as being a motivational speaker, that was my dream before. I didn't know how to get there. But then all of a sudden I started going to Toastmasters. Still didn't know how to get there, just knew that will help me get better at speaking. Then
yep.
somebody at Toastmasters goes, "Hey man, you want to come tell your story to a bunch of business leaders in the community?" I was like, whoa. So it's
Yeah.
like the how's none of your business, right? You just
Right.
dream and try to follow it, and then it will happen somehow.
Yeah, and just to close out on that point too, you mentioned the push-ups, to use that analogy. It Don't worry about doing a perfect push-up. Just do a push-up. The thing that you do, the rep, the thing that you create, whatever it is, it's not going to be perfect the first time. Don't worry about perfection. Just do it. Just get used to doing the thing, and then you'll improve over time. And just also remember too that consistency is a direction, not an action.
Consistency is a direction, not an action.
Yeah,
Wow.
so some days it might be 1 step forward, some days it might be half a step, some days it might be 10 steps forward. But as long as you're pushing in that direction, that's being consistent, because you're definitely gonna have your ups and downs for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Robin Sharma says about change. He says all changes, like, it seems difficult at first and then it gets really messy in the middle, but at the end it becomes beautiful. So yeah, just go for the thing and rewire. We can rewire it. That's the biggest thing, I think.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right. So my final question, Cody, is how can people reach you?
Yeah, so the podcast is pretty much anywhere podcasts are found: YouTube, Spotify, Apple. I think Google Podcasts is no longer a thing, but whatever's out there, Amazon Music. That's the Pure Wisdom Podcast. I am most social medias, C Jones 803, and I have on most of those social medias, TikTok, Instagram. I have links for the podcast, for coaching inquiries, those sorts of things. So that's pretty much the best place to find me.
Amazing. One final question. What should I have asked you that I didn't?
Man, I think we sort of touched on everything pretty much. I will say we didn't really get too much into fitness, and fitness has been a huge part of my story. The fitness has been an incredibly big portion of sort of helping me maybe become the person that I am.
Cool. And is that not just physically, it's also like mind as well?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So fitness, the thing about fitness is you hit it right on the head, man. It's not just about your physical fitness. It's also about your mental fitness, your emotional fitness. And this is one of the ways that fitness sort of helps you develop that, because I'm sure you probably know this. It's a very common thing for somebody to start a fitness plan and then either immediately or a couple weeks after or whatever start to filter out their environment. We talked about earlier being in the right rooms with people. Your environment is huge. Um, it's easy for us to sort of think of a diet. We think about what we eat, what we drink, that kind of thing. But when you start a fitness plan, you will probably find out that just as a byproduct of that, you also go on a mental diet, an emotional diet. Because if you think about like social media, if you think about the internet, if you think about the just get on any news channel these days, there is no shortage of negativity that we can consume out in the world. And so you have to be aware of that emotional, that sort of spiritual diet, and then the mental diet. Like what if you are around people who are just constantly draining your energy, they're negative, whatever it is. I mean, these things, you have to be aware of this. So that's just one of the many ways that fitness sort of helps you on your journey.
Amazing. As you can see, pure wisdom from Cody Jones. Cody, thank you so much for your time today. This
Thank
is awesome. Appreciate it.
thank you.